Searching for a romantic summer getaway? Escape with Rich Girl Summer, the new Audible original from Lily Chu. The exquisitely talented Philippa Soo, returning to narrate her 5th Lily Chu title. This time, Philippa is joined by her real-life husband, Stephen Pasquale. Set in Toronto's wealthy cottage country, aka the Hamptons of Canada, Rich Girl Summer follows the story of Valerie, a down-on-her-luck event planner posing as a socialite's long-lost daughter, while piecing together the secrets surrounding a mysterious family and falling deeper and deeper in love with the impossibly hard-to-read and infuriatingly handsome family assistant, Nico. Caught between pretending to belong and unexpectedly finding where she truly fits in, Valerie learns her summer is about to get far more complicated than she ever planned. She's in over her head and head over heels. Listen to Rich Girl Summer now on Audible. Go to audible.com/richgirlsummer.
You know that person in your life who just can't stand mayo? Call them traumatized. Call them closed-minded. We get it. They're stuck in their ways. But here's the thing. They just haven't tried Hellmann's flavored mayo. We're talking bold flavors that will flip even the biggest skeptics. Spicy mayo that adds the perfect kick to your burger. Garlic aioli that transforms ordinary fries into something extraordinary. Chipotle mayo that turns your basic wrap into a smoky sensation. So to all the mayo haters out there, yes, we're looking at you. It's time to eat your words. Because with mayo this flavorful, any hater is just a mayo lover waiting to be convinced. Hellmann's flavored mayo. Get ready to eat your words.
The amazing Kate Casey.
Welcome back for another episode of Reality Life with Kate Casey. One of the most infamous international murder cases of the last 2 decades is the story of Meredith Kercher's tragic death and the subsequent trial of Amanda Knox. With Hulu's new scripted series, The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox, bringing renewed attention to the case, I wanted to revisit my 2019 conversation with Amanda. In that interview, she opened up about her time as an American exchange student in Italy, her wrongful conviction in Meredith's murder, and the long journey that through multiple trials, appeals, and ultimately ended with her exoneration. I think it's important to give those that have been the subject of a media firestorm the opportunity to speak their piece, especially when they've been in a battle against an unrelenting Goliath. Over the years, I've had thousands of listeners tell me that it completely changed their opinion of her and the case, and I hope it does the same for you. But first, let's go into the background of the case. Amanda Knox was an American college student convicted and then acquitted of the murder of her British roommate, Meredith Kercher, in Italy. Her acquittal was overturned in 2013, and she was again convicted of murder in 2014. Her conviction was overturned in 2015. In 2005, she graduated from Seattle Preparatory High School in Washington. She entered the University of Washington that fall, planning to pursue a degree in linguistics. When she was 20, she left for Perugia, Italy, where she planned to spend a year at the University of Foreigners. In Perugia, she roomed with Meredith, a 21-year-old student from London. She was also studying linguistics abroad for a year. The cottage where Amanda and Meredith lived was already occupied by Meredith and 2 Italian women in the upstairs apartment. The building also housed 4 male students in the one below. The cottage was said to have been in a bad neighborhood, with drug dealers lingering at the nearby basketball court. Soon after she arrived in Perugia, Amanda and Meredith attended a classical music concert. There, Amanda met a 23-year-old Italian computer engineering student named Raffaele Solicito, and they began dating soon afterward. On November 2, 2007, Meredith was found dead on the floor of her bedroom in Perugia. She was partially clothed with her throat cut and had been sexually assaulted and repeatedly stabbed. Her body was covered with a blanket. Amanda told police that she had returned to the cottage on the morning of November 2nd, having spent the night at her boyfriend's apartment. Meredith was the only person that evening in the building with 8 occupants. Amanda noticed several things that seemed unusual. The front door was ajar, and there were specks of dried blood in the sink of the bathroom that she shared with Meredith. She had assumed that perhaps Meredith was having menstrual issues and had not cleaned up yet. She wrote in an email to family and friends after she had showered that she'd become alarmed when she found unflushed feces in the toilet of the apartment's other bathroom and left the house immediately. She called her roommate, Filomena Romanelli, to tell her that she thought that there had been an intruder, and then returned to the house shortly afterwards with Raffaello to look for signs of a break-in. After they found Meredith's door locked and a smashed window in Romanelli's bedroom, they called the local Carabinieri, Italy's military police force. The first officers to respond were not from the Carabinieri, but they were instead a more junior postal police who ultimately broke down Meredith's door and discovered her body. On the morning of November 2nd, the police noted Amanda and Raffaello were kissing outside her apartment, a detail which would become unexpectedly important later. They were questioned by police 3 days after the discovery of Meredith's body. During her interrogation, Amanda made a statement in which she admitted to being in the apartment during the murder and falsely implicated Patrick Lumumba, the owner of a bar where Amanda worked part-time. Amanda and Lumumba had been in contact on the evening of November 1st, when Patrick texted her to say she didn't need to come into work that evening. Amanda later retracted the confession, stating that it had been forced out of her. They told her that she would never see her family again and could not remember what happened to Meredith that night. Amanda and Raffaele were taken into custody in July of 2008. Italian prosecutors formally charged them with murder. Following a lengthy and feverishly publicized trial, both were found guilty in December of 2009 and sentenced to more than 20 years each. Leading the case against Amanda and her boyfriend was Giuliano Menini, who has since become a controversial and convicted figure. He had been charged with abuse of office in 2006 for allegedly wiretapping phones during his investigation of the renowned Monster of Florence case. He was found guilty in 2010, but the conviction was later overturned. Menini's conduct throughout the investigation of Meredith's murder was widely criticized. Many of the most bizarre theories about Amanda's motive included the idea that she was demonic, which was originated by Menini. Prosecutors in the initial trial, led by Menini, claimed that Amanda and Raffaele killed Meredith as part of a four-way sex game with a man named Rudy Guidi. According to their theory of the case, Amanda was a sex-crazed she-devil. That's an actual quote from Patrick Lumumba's lawyer, who had surrendered herself to lust, narcotic substances, and the consumption of alcohol. In support of this stupid theory, the prosecution kept coming back to the aforementioned fact that Amanda and Raffaele were kissing and cuddling outside the apartment after Meredith's body was found. Following Amanda and Raffaele's acquittal in 2015, Menini was disciplined by the Italian Council of Magistrates for violation of correct procedure in that case. Rudy Guidi, a drug dealer who was charged at the same time as Amanda and Raffaele, had been in jail for Meredith's murder since 2008. Guidi admitted that he was in Meredith's room on the night of the murder. His DNA was found on and inside Meredith's body and on her purse. His blood-stained fingerprints were found on her bedding. He initially said that Amanda was not at the apartment on the night Meredith died, but later changed his story to incriminate her. Guidi was tried separately from Raffaele and Amanda in a fast-track process and was found guilty of murder and sexual assault in 2008, and he's now serving a sentence. Guidi's DNA was found all over the crime scene, but Amanda and her boyfriend's was not. And as the defense would later point out, it's impossible to selectively clean up your own DNA while leaving another person's intact because DNA is invisible to the naked eye. So it's not as if Amanda and her boyfriend could have scrubbed their own DNA from the scene. A key piece of prosecution evidence was a clasp from Meredith's bra, which was found to contain traces of Raffaele's DNA. The only trace of either Amanda and her boyfriend found at the scene. The defense argued that the clasp should be inadmissible as evidence because it was found 46 days after the initial investigation and had therefore been contaminated. And the other crucial evidence was that the kitchen knife seized from the drawer in her boyfriend's apartment, which detectives claim was the murder weapon. Amanda's DNA was on the handle and evidence of Meredith's DNA was found on the blade. But during the appeal, forensic specialists testified that the quality of the DNA sample from the blade was too small to be reliable as evidence and that the blade itself was incompatible with Meredith's wounds. Now, the media latched onto the image of Amanda as a sexual deviant, with many Italian and British outlets running with this nickname Foxy Knoxy and detailing her sex life. And it would later emerge that while in prison, she was tricked into revealing how many men she'd slept with after prison officials falsely claimed that she had tested positive for HIV. From the night of her first interrogation onwards, Amanda maintained her innocence, stating that she and her boyfriend had been in his apartment the night of the murder, smoking pot and watching the movie Amelie. In November of 2010, the pair's appeals began. Forensic experts re-examined the bra clasp and the kitchen knife and concluded that neither provided enough evidence to link them to the crime. Court-appointed experts later testified that the initial investigation was so badly botched by police that the evidence should be ruled inadmissible. On October 3rd, 2011, Amanda and her boyfriend's murder conviction were eventually overturned. Even taken altogether, the judge wrote, the evidence did not prove in any way the guilt of Amanda Knox and Raffaele Solicito for the crime. Here is my interview with Amanda.
How hard is it to kill a planet? Maybe all it takes is a little drilling, some mining, and a whole lot of carbon pumped into the atmosphere. When you see what's left, it starts to look like a crime scene.
Are we really safe? Is our water safe? You destroyed our town.
And crimes like that, they don't just happen.
We call things accidents. There is no accident. This was 100% preventable.
They're the result of choices by people. Ruthless oil tycoons, corrupt politicians, even organized crime. These are the stories we need to be telling about our changing planet. Stories of scams, murders, and cover-ups that are about us and the things we're doing to either protect the Earth or destroy it. Follow Lawless Planet on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to new episodes of Lawless Planet early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
It's your man, Nick Cannon, and I'm here to bring you my new podcast, Nick Cannon at Night. I've heard y'all been needing some advice in the love department. So who better to help than yours truly? Nah, I'm serious. Every week, I'm bringing out some of my celebrity friends and the best experts in the business to answer your most intimate relationship questions. Having problems with your man? We got you. Catching feelings for your sneaky link? Let's make sure it's the real deal first. Ready to bring toys into the bedroom? Let's talk about it. Consider this a non-judgment zone to ask your questions when it comes to sex and modern dating in relationships, friendships, situationships, and everything in between. It's gonna be sexy, freaky, messy, and you know what? You'll just have to watch the show. So don't be shy. Join the conversation and head over to YouTube to watch Nick Cannon at Night or subscribe on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. Want to watch episodes early and ad-free? Join Wondery Plus right now.
I have been so excited to get to talk to you. I want to welcome you to the show.
Well, thank you very much.
So just to give everyone a perspective, so you were a sophomore in college when you went to Italy to study abroad. When you went off to school, what were your hopes for a career?
So I come from a multicultural background. I know I don't look it because I'm just like Whitey McWhitey over here, but like my mom was born in Germany. And so I had like on my mom's side of the family, we have a very European sensibility. And on my dad's side of the family, it's all hamburger helper. So it's a very different world to grow up in. And knowing that, I had a very clear understanding that the world is bigger than just my backyard. And that there are cultures and languages and foods and all different kinds of people that exist around the world. And I was really interested in being a bridge builder. I wanted to be a translator. I wanted to really learn not just the language of my ancestors, but a language that I was unfamiliar with, Italian. And I had hoped to be a translator one day.
Would your family have considered you naive when you went off to school, like still a little bit sheltered by home and, your first year of school?
Oh, sure. Yeah. My parents like to say that I was, book smart, but not street smart. I definitely had a very, very safe and, no problems upbringing. My parents were divorced, but also it wasn't like a big thing. I know people think that like that's a huge deal and it could be so traumatic, but it's like my parents divorced when I was younger than I could remember it. And my dad lived a block away. Like I could walk over to his house back and forth. So it was super easy. My family was all within walking distance, like my extended family. So really big, supportive family. I did well in school, no problems. But I was also very sheltered. Like I hadn't experienced bad things in my life. I think the worst thing that ever happened to me before I went to Italy was I was at my whole house full of girlfriends, like put on a party. And at a certain point, it got really loud. So the neighbors called the cops and the cops came by. And because I was the most sober one, I was the one who was sent out to go talk to the cops. And that was like the scariest thing in the world. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm in so much trouble. So that was me leading up to being arrested for murder.
So you arrived in Italy in September or in August to begin the school year?
So let's see. I arrived in Europe in August, but I spent some time in Germany with my family over there. I still have cousins and stuff over in Germany. So I stayed with them. And then in September, I went down to Italy, found where I was going to live, set it up with the Italian girls that I ended up moving in with, and then started school, I think, at the end of September.
So you had only known Meredith for only a few weeks, as well as Filomena?
So it's Laura, Filomena, and Meredith. And I had before the tragedy occurred, I had only known them for, I think, about 5 weeks. Yeah, so just a little over a month.
And how well did you know the men that lived downstairs?
Not super well. They were definitely friendly in the sense that, occasionally they invited us to, come down and hang out. But I didn't know them very well and I didn't speak Italian very well. So I just sort of knew them as the guys who lived downstairs. I knew my roommates, Laura, Filomena, and Meredith, much better.
So you meet Raffaella October 25th at a concert. You had only been dating a week when this happened.
Yes. So I met Raffaele when Meredith and I went to go to a classical music, concert. It was like in a classroom in the university. And we were just sort of sitting in line, and Meredith had to leave early. She left at intermission. And Raffaele came and sat next to me in her seat. So that's how I met Raffaele. And that was, a week before, again, everything happened. It was, what happened came completely out of nowhere. None of us saw it coming. And it still haunts me to this day how it just so happened that I spent the night at Raffaele's house that night. And if I hadn't, I could be dead too right now. So it really is insane when you think about it.
I think about that a lot. I think about how you're coping with the death of your flatmate and how, any of us could think of being in college. You have just basically met your roommate. You're getting to know each other. So first of all, you're in another country. You've just lost your flatmate. Now you're accused of murder, and you are reliant, as one would be at that age, on the authorities to help you navigate through that and protect you. But the exact opposite happened.
Yeah. And indeed, I didn't know that I was even suspected until days after I was even arrested. And I know that sounds weird, but at the time that I was arrested, the cops were still telling me that I was a witness and that I was crucial to the investigation and that everything would be okay and I would get to see my mom. And, they were just lying to me. That's one of the big misconceptions about the case is that I somehow knew that I was a suspect. And so I was planning some kind of way to lie to the cops. It's no, I had no idea. I was just sitting there, and the cops kept asking me to come in and answer their questions. And I did because they were telling me that I was an important witness. I was one of the first people to come home and discover that there was this horrible crime scene. And I was really close to Meredith, or at least as close as one can be after knowing someone for 5 weeks. But, we lived together and talked together and made cookies together, So we knew similar people.
Well, another misconception that I think a lot of people have missed is that there's this perception that you walked in and there was a broken door and there was blood everywhere and that you saw her body, which in fact didn't happen. If you could kind of explain to people how wrong that is.
Yeah, I mean, there are a million misconceptions about this case. And, we don't have enough time to even get into them all. I think the biggest misconception of all is that somehow this case is unresolved and we don't know what really happened.
Right.
When we do, like there's a person who was convicted of this crime who was a serial burglar and his name is Rudy Gaudet and he raped and killed Meredith. Like we know that. And, the misconceptions about me, like I came home, my front door was open, but it was not kicked down. And the latch on the door was broken, like in the sense that it had always been broken. We all knew that like it was a faulty door.
Yeah.
So, like it didn't immediately occur to me that someone had broken into my home because I knew that our front door was wonky. And there wasn't blood everywhere. Like I went into my bathroom and there was a little bit of blood in the sink and a little bit of blood on the floor. But I thought that could be from anything. Like someone could have like cut themselves in the kitchen or someone could be on their period or at first I thought it was even like maybe I brushed my teeth and spit out blood from my toothpaste because it was diluted too. So it was like nothing about what I saw screamed homicide to me. And that's why it was so frustrating when I was like on trial and had to answer all these, answer to my prosecutor who was like, how could you not have known? And it's like, I just didn't know, like, call me crazy or call me like naive. But when I walk into a room and I see a little bit of blood in a sink, I don't immediately think homicide. Like, that's not what I thought. And then when I saw that a window had been broken, I was like, oh my gosh, maybe someone broke in and in climbing in through the window, maybe they cut themselves. And that's why there's a little bit of like, it did not occur to me. The last thing I thought was that someone had died.
Yeah.
And it really, really took me a long time to even grapple with the fact that like, as soon as they kicked down Meredith's bedroom door and they were like, a body, like I remember they said a foot even. They didn't say a body, they said a foot. And I was like, what, is there like a foot in the room? Like, what do you mean? It was really a very, very shocking time. And I was also hearing all of this in Italian and trying to like translate it and make sure that I wasn't mishearing things and misunderstanding. Anyway, it was very, very confusing. And that's one of the misconceptions of the case is, what did I say in that exact moment to the cops? And it's like, well, I was trying to explain in broken Italian that it was weird that she had locked her door into her bedroom, but not crazy. Like, anyway, it's lots of misconceptions. Another big misconception is that like I cleaned the crime scene. Like that's one of those things that's pitched out there. And it's like, cleaned the crime scene. Like in Meredith's room, there was like blood everywhere, but I didn't see into that room. And I did not have access to that room. And no one cleaned up that crime scene. Nothing was cleaned up there. And so I don't understand where this like idea of cleaning happened. Anyway.
How about for your parents? I mean, I'm a parent now and I think about how painful this absolutely it was for them. And then to see in television reports showing you doing cartwheels and kissing your boyfriend and shopping, how they made it out to seem like you were this, sex-crazed, unsympathetic roommate. That must have been enormously painful for them.
I mean, it was enormously painful for all of us because the truth is, once that lens of suspicion is put on you, you can do no right? You cry, it's crocodile tears. You don't cry, you're a psychopath. You get up and stretch in the middle of the night, well, you're doing cartwheels and you don't care about anything. Oh, your boyfriend gives you a kiss. oh, it must be because they're just so sexually charged up from having orgy sex murdered this person that like they can't keep their hands off each other. Like you can interpret any behavior as sinister if you want to. And it puts people like me in a position of like, well, now I'm like, first of all, it never occurred to me to like try to act differently than I did because I was just an innocent person who was, dealing with this insane situation that I never knew about. And then my poor parents are watching as the world is crafting this imaginary person and everyone is judging this imaginary person. And that's not me. And meanwhile, they know who I am. And they're watching me sit in a prison cell, suffering the consequences for this idea of me that everyone has crafted that is in no way representative of me.
Also, when you were interrogated and relentlessly, you at that point didn't speak Italian that well.
Mm-hmm.
What they did not give you offer you counsel at all?
So yeah, that's another huge misconception of this case is that I somehow like waltzed into the police office and started lying my head off to the cops. And it's like, no, I went and I did my very best to talk to them in a foreign language. And when in my final interrogation, when they turned off all the recording equipment, they had recorded everything up to that point, turned it off, and started screaming at me in Italian and telling me that everything that I knew was wrong and that I must have witnessed the murder and that somehow like I knew everything about the case and I had amnesia and that's what happened. And so I better give up the goods or else I'm never going to see my family again. Of course, that's not on the record because there's no recording of it, but that's what happened. And I got scared out of my mind and didn't even realize what was going on. And the only thing I thought was, well, these are the cops, like these are the people who I'm supposed to trust. They wouldn't lie to me. So I must be the one who has amnesia and is crazy. Like it was, and to, like the thing that people I think need to remember is my roommate had just been murdered. Like I could have died. Like anything was possible at that point. I was scared. And just the amount of sort of blame that's put on a 20-year-old kid who has no idea what's going on when in fact, like the police knew exactly what they were doing when they turned off the recording device, when they took away my phone, even though my mom was calling me over and over and over again. They knew that my mom was arriving that morning, so they needed to arrest me that night. Like they knew exactly what they were doing. And they accomplished what they intended to accomplish, which was to arrest someone. Rudy Gaudet never confessed to having committed the crime. I think that's one problem, is that despite the overwhelming evidence that places him at the crime scene, committing the murder, committing the rape, his DNA is all over Meredith's body, all over the crime scene. He has always claimed that he was just having sex with Meredith and that somebody came and killed her while he was sitting in the bathroom.
Oh my God.
And for some reason, people have latched on to that as if to say, well, what he's really trying to say is that he committed the murder with other people and that he was just the guy who was raping her while I was stabbing her to death. So a lot of people have basically said everyone's lying. They're all involved equally, despite the fact that the evidence suggests otherwise. There's literally no DNA of me in Meredith's room where she was raped and murdered. There's DNA of Rudy Gaudet everywhere. And people don't, I think people are so caught up in the story that they forget about the reality.
So then the reality also of being a prisoner. And I remember reading stories about, well, Italian prisons are not like the ones in the US. Like they're eating pasta, she gets to read. They made it sound like it was like a vacation destination. And listening to so many interviews you've done, you've mentioned I was in prison with women with mental health issues who've killed their children, wisely always try to remember that someone's life experience, there's a story behind it. What is the reality of being in an Italian prison?
So I can't fully speak to how it compares to an American prison because I've not personally spent time in American prisons. What I can say is that any kind of confinement of that nature is not a cakewalk. It is, it's an existential crisis every day where you're basically told that your life doesn't matter, right? Like you are paying with your life for whatever crime it is that you committed or didn't commit in my case. And that for these years of your life, you are worthless. Like you are just an object to be contained. And that really, really impacts people, whether they're guilty or not. It's insanely traumatizing. And meanwhile, already the vast majority of people who are coming into that prison environment are traumatized. They were traumatized before they even committed a crime. A lot of times they are the victims of crimes before they ever committed a crime themselves. And a lot of them were suffering from mental illness and depression and anxiety and drug addiction and had been abused and neglected. So these were people who needed help, who were being put through yet another traumatic experience and didn't know weren't given the resources and tools to deal with the emotional fallout of that. So of course there was infighting, and of course there was violence, and of course there was drama. Like that was just a natural consequence of putting broken people into a broken system. And I very much was blown away to be exposed to that reality, which I otherwise never would have. And it really, really ultimately gave me a lot of compassion for my fellow prisoners, even as I lived in perpetual terror of them. It's an interesting balance of I always felt like the odd man out. I always felt like if I didn't have a hustle to help, stabilize my role within the prison community, I was at risk. So I was an educated person. I taught myself Italian. So I eventually was writing people's letters for them and reading their court documents for them. And that was crucial because the vast majority of these women were illiterate.
Oh,
and
wow.
We're talking like vast amounts of poverty and neglect. And that has remained to me to this day. And I know that here in the United States, once again, we're seeing the most vulnerable people who end up being put through this process and are not better for it.
I once read an interview that you had done where it made me wonder about the staff at the prison and how did they treat you?
Depends on the staff. All right.
Yeah.
It was anything from gentleness and kindness to sexual harassment and abuse. So it really depended on the person. And it really was a matter of me being at that person's mercy.
Wow.
So across the board.
And did you keep in touch with anyone that you met during that time, or have you just sort of tried to leave that in the past and move forward?
I actually am still friends with one of my old cellies, and she comes to Thanksgiving every year.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really great. And then I wondered how, when you were released, who was there to take you home or to the airport?
Oh my. Well, honestly, it's like quite a story. And I actually have a whole episode about it in my podcast, Labyrinths. It's one of our bonus episodes with interviewing a man named Steve Moore, who is a former FBI agent who teamed up with my family to plan and execute this insane escape, like maddening car chase, like escape drama, because people were clawing, like getting into car accidents, trying to get their hands on me. It was an ordeal. So I recommend listening to that because it's a crazy story.
Is there anything that has been hard to kind of shake from that time in prison, like the smell of some foods or a certain sound, or it took you a long time to be able to sleep without, fearing there's noise in the background, anything like that?
What's the most lasting impact? I mean, I think the thing that really stays with me from that experience is the feeling of helplessness. And, I will never forget all those moments that I had to convince myself that my life was still worth living. And I had to really convince myself and try to make a point of, in that very moment, doing something that felt worthwhile to me, whether that be writing a letter to my family member or doing a bunch of sit-ups or something. I needed something to feel like my whole life wasn't just devoid of meaning because my identity had been stolen. And that will always stick with me. I do remember that there are some like Italian phrases that I only ever heard in prison. Mm-hmm. Like I learned in prison, that if I hear them today, they sort of like ping me in a weird way where I'm like, no, I'm not in prison. Like that's not just a phrase that they use in prison. An example being acquitted, which means, basically, we don't really have this word in English, but it means like bring your face to it. It's like come, like you would say it to somebody to say, come to the door or come to the window. But I only ever heard it as like, come to the cell door, like Amanda, acquitted. And that was, I heard that a lot in prison. And I never heard it elsewhere. So the one time I heard it in like a movie that I saw, after I got out, I had a little bit of a panic attack. And, to this day, I still have like weird associations with certain phrases that I'll hear.
Do you ever have anxiety dreams still about it, or has that kind of left?
I do. I thought they were behind me because it had been a long time since I'd had one, but I actually had one last week. And that was sad because I really did think that I was past the being trapped in prison in my dreams phase. But you know what? They say that like grief comes in cycles and it never really goes away. It's just the peaks sort of even out over time. And I think I was just in a peak.
Do you still get recognized? And do you feel that you're at a point now where people have shifted their response to you? So perhaps when you came home, they still thought you were guilty, but over time, people have come to the realization that their perception was totally off.
So the reclaiming of my identity has been the ongoing struggle since 2007. And it's not something that has ended to this day, in part because on the one hand, I have been changed because of what I've experienced. Like there's no way that you go through developmental years of your life accused of a crime you didn't do in a foreign country, locked in jail, and come out the same person that you would have been if you had just gone to school and had a great study abroad experience. Like I had to, first of all, when I got out, reconcile with the fact that the life that I thought that I had, that I was going to live, that didn't exist anymore. I, the person, was different because of what had happened to me, despite not wanting to be, altered by this experience that didn't belong to me, that I didn't deserve. Like I still was altered by it. So I have to do a lot of self-discovery in the wake of all of it. But meanwhile, there's this version of me that exists in the public consciousness that everyone has judgments about. And so anytime I'm interacting with the world, it's through a filter. Somebody already has a preconception about me, and they're going to judge anything I say and I do based upon that filter. And that is something that happens to me to this day. I mean, I think it's a reality for a lot of people who find themselves at the center of true crime genres, because a lot of times the feeling is, oh, these are just characters in this morality play that I'm witnessing. And once the true crime story is over, they just disappear. And it's like, no, I'm a real person and I exist and I continue on to this day. And you don't get to decide who I am because you just read a bunch of articles about me. Like that's not who I am, and that's not fair. And this problem of reclaiming your narrative once your identity has been stolen is one that I've felt like I've been trying to figure out on my own for a long time. But today, people come to me asking me, like, I've been accused of things and, not crimes even, just like people are calling me a slut in school. What do I do? How do I show who I really am? How do I reclaim my narrative? And I go, well, there's, no right answer, but the way that I've done it is I've just tried to embrace the fact that I've had this experience. And I've tried to, instead of be reactive, be proactive. Go, what have I taken? What have I learned from my experience? And how does it give me a unique perspective of the world? And how can I share that in a way that really demonstrates who I am? And that's been my strategy. It's been why, and it's also because I went back to school and I'm a storyteller. So I'm interested in people's stories, and I'm interested in the way that stories are stolen. And how you can rebuild. It's not even about taking back the story. It's like, how do I rebuild a story? How do I write a story that is more real and more true and more impactful than this salacious story that was the first thing for many people when they thought of me? And how can other people do that? So that's a big thing that I do now.
The story of Meredith has also been stolen from her, because
Totally.
She's now just a murder victim, someone who was raped. So since you lived with her, what would you like people to know about her?
She had a great sense of humor. I mean, a little bit ironically, she really liked to read like mystery novels and those kind of true crimey things. I have a great memory of her wearing some boy jeans that I think that she had inherited from an ex-boyfriend or something when she was doing laundry, and we put on some music and she was doing a little dance while she was doing her laundry. A lot of people described her as being this sort of quiet, demure person, and she definitely was classy and very nice, but she also liked to have fun. And she was we walked to the grocery store together and carried those heavy water bottles and trudged up the hill together. She was sweet, and she was definitely very mindful of her family. She talked to me about her mom, and she was young. She had a whole lot ahead of her. And really what happened to her, it could have happened to anyone, because no one can say that she was asking for it in any way. She was just at home, in her own home.
Does this make you think about if you were to have a daughter, in the future, would you want her to study abroad? Would you be terrified to have her do something like that?
So, one of the things that I've sort of taken away from this whole experience after coming home and meeting a lot of other wrongfully convicted people, but also crime victims of crime, is that bad things can happen wherever you are, whatever it may be. There are certain things that make you more vulnerable when you're studying abroad. You suddenly are, away from your network of people that you normally would be around. So you are more vulnerable. But you can do things to alleviate those kinds of things. And what's crazy is Meredith was doing those things. Like, she had her friend group of English friends and she was living with other people. She just happened to be alone that night. Like, what happened to Meredith literally is like the worst case scenario because she was doing everything right. Mm-hmm. And yet, so if anything, her story really shows that even if you do everything right, something bad can still happen. And it's just horrifically tragic. Thankfully, it's not the usual thing that happens. It is very, even of people who get into trouble when they're abroad, like what happened to her is really exceptionally bad. And I think that the risks of that kind of thing happening don't necessarily outweigh the benefits of being exposed to another culture and another people. And I still think that that's an incredibly important part of a human being's development, because you just got to know that who you are and the way that you think and the way that you think the world works is not what those people over there think. And you should spend some time with them and be exposed to different, mindsets, and do what you can to protect yourself and develop a network of support. But also sometimes bad things just happen.
Has this diminished your love of Italy and their culture and their people, or are you able to just separate it?
I have a nuanced opinion of their culture and their people, but it's also given me a nuanced opinion of my own culture because, once again, I've been exposed by virtue of my own wrongful conviction to the sort of horrible injustices that happen over here. So I don't think that it's in any way lessened the things that I appreciate about Italian culture. And if anything, I was exposed to incredible kindnesses by Italian people who were very supportive of my family, despite what was going on with me.
Oh my gosh, the stories about your family. I'm like, can I be adopted by this family? I mean, your stepfather bringing cranberry sauce to prison for Thanksgiving. I mean, they seem like really superb, just incredible people. So you seem very lucky to have such a great family behind you.
You know what? And prison really emphasized that for me, because I just thought that, having a big fat Greek wedding style family was normal. And then I encountered lots of people in prison who did not have the support of their family members and were totally alone, or who had been abused by family. And I was just shocked. And of course, that's going to screw a person up and break them if, from a young age, they didn't have the kind of support and just knowing that someone has got your back in the end. You can always call someone. That's my family, and they put aside everything in order to be there for me, and they all suffered for it. Everyone is still grappling with the sort of emotional repercussions of having to put their life on hold in order to try to save my life. And when ultimately they didn't have control over that. So it was an existential crisis for them as well.
So now you live in Seattle, you're married.
I am.
You have a podcast, you're an author, and I have to commend you for the work that you do for the voice of the wrongfully imprisoned, which I'm also passionate about. Tell everybody what has been, this great passion project of yours with your husband and life now in Seattle.
So one of the biggest things that has impacted me was meeting other wrongfully convicted people. I cannot describe to you the feeling of walking into the first Innocence Network conference and having these men who had spent decades in prison for crimes they didn't commit come up to me and say, you don't have to explain a thing, little sister. We know, don't worry. It's just family immediately. And I had almost similar experiences with people who have been traumatized, but in very different ways. And it's interesting to see and to be sort of constantly, people come to me with their stories of being trapped or feeling lost or being, having their identity stolen from them because they know that I can relate to that and that I'll hear them and they'll feel less alone for it. And you don't have to be wrongly convicted for that to happen to you. I've had that, like people come up to me and say, I was gang raped when I was 16 years old. And the way that you describe how it felt to be wrongly convicted feels a lot like that to me. And it's like, wow, how much like compassion and empathy we could all have for each other if we just understood that we are all human beings on the other side of these tragedies. And so my big passion project with my husband has been this podcast Labyrinths, where I try to tell these stories of people who are feeling lost or trapped or like their identity is stolen and how they found their way out again, or if they're in the midst of finding their way out again. And in the meantime, I'm still figuring out my own journey. Like there's a whole episode in season 1 where I am grappling with the fact that the killer of Meredith, Rudy Gaudet, got out of prison.
Right.
And so I'm just sort of going through the process of like, wow. And of course, the headlines when that happened did not mention his name, did not mention Meredith's name. They mentioned my name.
Right.
And it's like, why is it that to this day, the news of the actual person who committed this crime and the actual person who was the victim of this crime are less important than my name as someone who had nothing to actually do with this crime?
Unbelievable.
Like that's insane.
It is.
So like it's like this beautiful place where I grapple with my own journey and then really show a lot of compassion and give a lot of space for the voices of other people who are working through their own journeys.
Tell everybody where they can find your show and they can follow you on social media.
That would be great. So first of all, I'm on the board of the Frederick Douglass Project for Justice, which I'll send you some information about, but it's all about sort of building bridges between the incarcerated and the non-incarcerated populations so that people can have a better understanding of each other. So if you're ever interested in looking into that, it's like a great organization. Labyrinths can be found wherever you listen to podcasts. And I can be followed on Twitter at Amanda Knox and on Instagram at Amama Knox.
The amazing Kate Casey.
I once again want to thank Amanda Knox. I'm so grateful for her time, and I hope that this is helpful as you watch that new Hulu series. I want to remind you to make sure that you subscribe to this podcast. Please leave us 5-star review, and also make sure that you subscribe to my What to Watch list of what to watch each week in unscripted TV by going to katecasey.substack.com. And also make sure you check out bonus podcasts. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this particular episode. You can get them on Apple Podcast and also on Patreon, patreon.com/KKC. And finally, make sure that you follow me on social media. My Instagram is at KKCCA, TikTok it's KKC, and Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky at KKC. Check back tomorrow for an all-new episode.